We start off with the latest coming in from Afghanistan. The Taliban terrorists have entered the outskirts of Kabul as the threat to the capital city is growing with each passing minute. The Taliban spokesperson has now said that the Taliban terrorists have been instructed to stay at the gates of Kabul and not enter the capital. Local sources suggesting that the Afghan President Ashraf Ghani is in talks with the US peace envoy Zalmay Khalilzad and the NATO officials. Although some residents reported the terrorists had peacefully entered some outer suburbs, this comes hardly hours after the terrorists had taken over another provincial capital, Maidan Sheher city, which is just 50 kilometers or 30 miles away from Kabul. Let's go straight across now to our correspondent Anas Malik, who has been in Kabul, getting us the very latest. Anas, over to you. What more do we know at this point?
Well, what we know is that President Ashraf Ghani is currently in a meeting with US Special Envoy for Afghan Peace, Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad. This is what has been confirmed by Afghan Presidential Palace. If I talk to you about what is happening here in Kabul right now, to my left, at least in the skies of Kabul, I can spot at least 4 helicopters, with one of them being constantly hovering over the US Embassy compound. We've been seeing helicopters go in, fly and fly out. There is an evacuation mission that we understand is ongoing of the European embassies, of the US Embassy and of the Canadian Embassy as well. If you can hear probably as I talk to you, that there are helicopters that are hovering over. I see another helicopter to my left, again towards the US Embassy compound. So there is excessive movement of helicopters that are being witnessed today on the streets of Kabul. There is chaos, there is anger, there is frustration. We see policemen who are angry at the people, at their higher commands for not resisting the Taliban. We are given to understand that the Taliban spokesperson has said that there is a transition of power, there is negotiations for the transition of power that is currently ongoing, and subsequently we saw a statement coming in from the acting Afghan Interior Minister as well, saying that the transition of power will be peaceful. Given to understand that the meeting of Zalmay Khalilzad at the Afghan Presidential Palace is to do with that. There are some reports that Taliban officials are also there at the Afghan Presidential Palace. It is unverified as yet, independently unverified about Taliban officials being present in the Afghan Presidential Palace. But what I can confirm that indeed US Special Envoy for Afghan Peace, Ambassador Khalilzad, is in a meeting along with NATO senior civil representative Stefano Pontecorvo, and additionally the two are meeting Afghan President Ashraf Ghani at the Afghan Presidential Palace. Yes, Molly.
Right, Anas, let's also talk about the swift territorial gains that have been made by the Taliban over the last few days. This coming in just after the Maidan Sheher city, which is considered as the gateway to Kabul, has also been taken over by the Taliban over the last few hours.
Well, yes, the Taliban have claimed to have overrun 27 provinces out of the 34 in the country. This is a claim, but in most of these claims we find some substance because they are verified by local lawmakers. The latest being that of Wardak city or Wardak province, the city of Maidan Sheher.
Well, very quickly, let's also have a look at what Al Jazeera has to say about the Taliban takeover. This is 2 hours ago, so let's hear this.
Just after 10 hours GMT, you're watching our continuing coverage of the breaking news coming to us out of Afghanistan. As it stands this hour, Taliban fighters surround the capital, Kabul, and negotiations are underway to secure a transfer of power. There is a Taliban delegation inside the presidential palace, we understand. The situation on the ground is changing fast, hour to hour. It has intensified over the past couple of hours, with more and more provincial capitals falling to the forces of the Taliban. In a statement, the Taliban said it doesn't want to enter Kabul by force. It's told its fighters to wait on the outskirts of the city and not try to enter the city. The Taliban statement also called for safe passage to be given to anyone wanting to leave and for women to head to what it called, quote, protected areas. Foreign embassies have continued to evacuate their staff, with helicopters seen going between those buildings and the airport. US diplomatic officials have now started working from inside the airport. While NATO says several EU staff have moved to a safer, undisclosed location inside the capital. Live now to Kabul, and our correspondent tracking the developments for us hour to hour, Charlotte Bellis. Charlotte, sketchy details, I know, but just give us a sense of what the latest information is.
Well, this is actually not happening in Kabul, but it is the latest information and quite dramatic. The Taliban have taken over Bagram Airfield, which was the big hub for the US, and inside that airfield is a prison. It's only just north of Kabul. Inside that prison was ISIL fighters, many of them, and as the Taliban have overrun this prison, these ISIL fighters have got out. We understand there are clashes, fighting, potential killing happening in this prison right now between the Taliban and ISIL, to the extent that the Taliban are sending their special forces units to Bagram prison to try to get control of the situation with there's thousands of prisoners in this prison, to try to get control of the situation developing there. So that has just come to us just in the last few minutes. Inside Kabul, however, it is just a constant stream of helicopters going back and forth between the embassy to the airport. Usually, and even this morning, it's just a straight shot back and forward in Chinooks. But since maybe 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, the Taliban said that they did have some fighters in the city. Then we heard gunshots. Then smoke started burning from US government buildings as they started burning documents. And at that point, many more helicopters were put in the air. US Apache helicopters, Black Hawks. They started firing heat flares, which, as we understand it, are used to kind of stop surface-to-air missiles.
So basically there's a lot that is happening right now in Afghanistan, in various parts of Afghanistan. We had made a video a couple of weeks ago in which we spoke about how US have withdrawn from Afghanistan, and we had speculated that how Taliban would take over Afghanistan. And 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after that video that we had made, it's kind of clear that Taliban is taking over Afghanistan, right? So very quickly, I am going to quickly read or go through a few of the news that I have, that we can all of us look at it together. So clearly, President Ashraf Ghani has left the country. That's what is being said, right? So there is a timeline of how Taliban has advanced across Afghanistan. We are going to talk about this timeline a little later. Now look at this, 15th of August, how things have unfolded. Here's a timeline of how things have unfolded. So Indian embassy is not supposed to it's not going to shut down in Kabul, but officials moving swiftly towards an evacuation plan. Taliban says they are not going to enter Kabul city, and they are going to wait for a peaceful transition of power. So basically they are seeking power. Afghan government delegation, including Abdullah to travel to Qatar today to meet the Taliban representatives. Okay. Security and boarding processes of Air India. There's an Air India flight that has taken off with 129 passengers from Afghanistan, which is going to be reaching India tonight. Even Russia says there's no need to evacuate embassy in Afghanistan. Anyways, the big news is that President Ghani has left for Tajikistan is what it looks like. So clearly the shift of power is happening. We are going to talk about date wise the timeline of how Taliban has taken over Afghanistan yet again. Okay, so we see the same thing. Vice President Saleh says he won't exit. So interestingly, while the president Ashraf Ghani has left, but Vice President says that he's not going to be leaving Kabul or Afghanistan. Right, very interesting. And the Afghan president not only has left, but he has also signed his resignation, and an interim government will be constituted soon. Not even sure whether it makes sense to have an interim government, because anyways Taliban is taking over everything. Right, so here's an interesting thing that Taliban said. So Taliban said that women will have freedom, foreigners can leave, Taliban on possible new regime. So Taliban has already asked the women employees of a bank at Kandahar to stop working. So it's funny that on one hand they're saying women will have freedom, on the other hand they have stopped women from working in the banks. Yeah, so here's where it is. Afghan women forced from banking jobs as Taliban takes control. The gunmen escorted them to their home and told them not to return to their jobs. Instead, they explained that male relatives could take their place, according to 3 of the women involved and the bank's manager. Wow. It's interesting, because when the US troops were leaving Afghanistan, at that time there was the spokesperson of Taliban mentioned that they are going to give equal rights to women, they could study, and it would be different this time around compared to how the regime was in the past prior to 2001. But clearly it looks like it has not changed. Nothing really has changed. It's really strange to not be allowed to get to work, but now this is what it is. Noor Khatira, a 43-year-old woman who had worked in the accounts department of the bank, told Reuters, "I taught myself English and even learned how to operate a computer, but now I will have to look for a place where I can just work with more women around." Wow. So the Taliban has been overrunning the place, which we will talk about, how the entire takeover is happening. Who's who behind the Taliban leadership? Now let's have a look at the who's who. As hardline Islamic group appears to be on the brink of regaining power, here is a rundown of what is little known about their leadership. So Haibatullah Akhundzada is the supreme leader, was appointed leader of Taliban in a swift power transition after the US drone strike killed his predecessor Mullah Mansoor Akhtar in 2016. Okay, Akhundzada was a low-profile religious figure, so he seems to be the supremo there. Mullah Baradar is the founder. Abdul Ghani Baradar was raised in Kandahar, the birthplace of Taliban movement. Sirajuddin Haqqani, the Haqqani network. Okay, Mullah Yaqub, the Shion. So 3-4 main names: Mullah Yaqub, Sirajuddin Haqqani, Mullah Baradar, and Haibatullah Akhundzada. Okay, so these are basically the think tank or the men behind Taliban. Right, so here's another one. This one was sometime back. I'm not sure when this happened. 7th August, this was a week ago. Kabul blast claimed that Taliban kills Afghan Air Force pilot. Okay, there's going to be officials said Afghan Air Force pilot Hamidullah Azimi died when a sticky bomb attached to his vehicle detonated. Well, and also as you heard in the Wayan News, was it the Wayan News or Al Jazeera, that they have taken over the Bagram airfield, and with the prisoners of ISIL there is obviously a fighting that is going on between Taliban and the ISIL prisoners who were there in the Bagram airfield. So that's another thing going on. So now let's look at the timeline. So April 14th, 2021 is when Joe Biden announced the withdrawal of the US troops from Afghanistan starting May 1st and ending on September 11th. We still haven't reached September 11th, okay? Taliban fighters launch a major offensive on the 4th of May on Afghan forces in southern Helmand province, and they attack 6 other provinces. May 11th, which is 11 days after the US troops started retreating, Taliban captured the Nurk district just outside the capital city of Kabul. June 7th, more than 150 Afghan soldiers are killed in 24 hours as fighting worsens. June 22nd, Taliban fighters launch a series of attacks in the north of the country, far from their traditional strongholds in the south. So basically they are covering almost all of Taliban. So there was a saying that no one power can rule the whole of Afghanistan. Looks like that's about to change, because Taliban might just rule or have power in the entire Afghanistan. American troops quietly pull out of their main military base in Bagram Airways. That's on 2nd July. The Taliban say they could present a written peaceful proposal to the Afghan government as soon as August. Okay. Taliban insurgents control about half of the country's districts by July 21st. By July 25th, US vows to continue support to the Afghan troops. Doesn't matter, with some airstrikes they did. July 26th, nearly 2,400 Afghan civilians were killed or wounded in May and June in escalating violence, the highest number for those months since records started in 2009. August 6th, Zoranj in the south of the country becomes the first provincial capital to fall to the Taliban in years. August 13th, 2 days ago, 4 more provincial capitals fall in the day, including Kandahar, the country's second city and spiritual home of the Taliban. Yesterday, the Taliban take city of Mazar-e-Sharif, and with little resistance, Pule Alam, capital of Logar province, just 70 kilometers south of Kabul. And today, the Taliban take the city of Jalalabad without a fight, effectively surrounding Kabul. Taliban insurgents enter Kabul as United States evacuate diplomats from its embassy by helicopter. That was very quick, actually. They started on May 4th is when they captured the first province of Helmand, and today is August 15th, so that's like about 2.5 months. 3.5 months, about 2.5 to 3 months is what they have been able to capture almost all of Afghanistan. And this was known. I had said this in my previous video when US troops were withdrawing, the Taliban will take over, and this is exactly what is happening. Taliban is taking over. Now, what this means for India, multiple things really, okay, because obviously any radical outfit is always a threat to India as a secular country. Also, India has a lot of investments made in Afghanistan, so obviously we'll have to look at those investments as well. While I do understand that Major Gauravaria mentioned in one of his very emotional interviews that we have a lot of money, it doesn't really matter, but it does matter. If you have made investments, it's not the money, you have made investments in diplomatic relationships with that country, which of course seems like it may not work out very well in our favor. It also might work well in favor of Pakistan, because clearly Pakistan, we've spoken about Pakistan on numerous occasions. They are a country, just the way India is not a country that works very well or is in favor of radical groups. Similarly, Pakistan is just the opposite. They do very well when it comes to radical groups. So for them, it's great news, because if Afghanistan is ruled by radical groups, and anyways they have recognized Taliban as a legitimate group, they do not consider Taliban as a terrorist outfit, so for them it works better. So clearly India is not in the most favorable situation here with Taliban taking over Afghanistan, but then we are yet to see how India is going to counter the current situation in Afghanistan, and also how the rest of the world are going to react to the whole developments that's going on in Afghanistan. My personal view of it is that obviously I would always prefer a democratic government in any country, a government that is for the people, gives freedom to people of the country, rather than a more radical kind of a regime like the Taliban, which clearly doesn't seem to be giving the kind of freedom that at least women should get in any country. So that's the current situation of Afghanistan. I'm sure there'll be a lot more developments happening there. I'll try and bring in like a weekly update on Afghanistan for the next few weeks, till things look like it's kind of plateauing, because there's a lot happening there. All right, let me know how you liked this video. If you liked it, then please go ahead and like and share, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell icon. And that's about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Till I come back in the next one. Peace.